Eddie Griffin and black people are now responding and sharing what some people are thinking after news broke of the U.S. bombing in Iran. While headlines flash red alerts and politicians talk about retaliation and strategy, in living rooms, barbershops, and timelines across America, the reaction is far less patriotic and far more personal. For many, it's not about foreign policy, it's about priorities. It's about schools, underfunded, neighborhoods over police, inflation rising, and veterans still untreated. There's been a long history on the conflict between the United States and Iran, but on February 28, the United States and Israel would bomb the country of Iran, with Trump accusing Iran of having nuclear bombs that threaten allies and can even reach the U.S. The attack would end up killing Iran's supreme leader on Saturday, which for many would increase a worry of retaliation by Iran. In response, Iran would fire missiles at Israel and U.S. bases across the region in the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan. Images would shake up people back in the U.S. and even left some stranded in those mentioned regions due to airports being shut down because of the conflict. During a new episode of his show, NNN, Eddie Griffin will call out the United States for its contradictions of being a Christian country and even using its citizens to fight a war unrelated to them.
President Trump says he's May the 17th, I believe the date is, that this country's going to rededicate itself to God. One nation under God, because we're such godly people. That's why we just stole a man and his wife from Venezuela, president. The news ain't covered nothing. Where's this man and his wife at now? Y'all just use them distraction stories and then they just disappear from the news feed. I thought the Ten Commandments said, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill. Now you're ready to send our children over to Iran to kill some more motherfuckers ain't decent to us. Y'all want to dedicate this nation to God. God here with y'all. Y'all wasn't talking about the goddamn load of motherfuckers y'all praying to.
The majority of the white middle class in America was built from welfare, which completely challenges the trope black people are the welfare recipients in this country. It is vital when we talk about history and talk about America, we understand that everything stems down to racism. The American middle class didn't just appear naturally after World War II. In many ways, it was built by government policy, especially the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, better known as the GI Bill. When World War II ended, the United States faced a huge challenge. Millions of soldiers were coming home. The government wanted to prevent mass unemployment and help veterans build stable lives. So the GI Bill offered benefits like free or subsidized college tuition, low-interest home loans, job training, and unemployment payments. These programs opened doors that had never been available to many Americans before. For millions of white working-class families, including immigrants and the children of immigrants, this was life-changing. Many men who fought in the war were from communities that had previously been marginalized in American society: Italian Americans, Irish Americans, and Polish Americans. Before the war, these groups often faced discriminations and were not always fully accepted as part of American mainstream white culture. They soon and quickly got absorbed into whiteness after the war. When they returned home and used the GI Bill, things changed dramatically. They went to college in huge numbers. They bought homes in rapidly growing suburbs. They started businesses, into professional careers, and built wealth. In a very real way, the GI Bill helped transform these communities into a large and stable American middle class. This opportunity was not shared equally. Black Americans also served in World War II in large numbers and had been fighting for many wars prior. They fought overseas for democracy while still living under segregation here at home. When they returned, they were technically eligible for the same benefits under the GI Bill. In practice, however, many were blocked from receiving them. The law was administered locally, and discrimination was widespread. Banks often refused to give home loans to black veterans. Many universities refused to admit black students, and historically, black colleges had limited space. Housing programs were shaped by policies like redlining, which labeled black neighborhoods as risky and denied them mortgages flat out. As a result, many white veterans were able to buy homes and build generational wealth, while many black veterans were shut out of the same opportunities and pigeonholed into communities like the ghetto. The result was profound. The GI Bill helped create the modern American middle class, but because of discrimination and how it was implemented, it disproportionately helped white Americans, while leaving many black veterans behind. The unequal access helped shape patterns of wealth, home ownership, and opportunity in the United States that are still visible today. Understanding this history helps explain not only how the American middle class grew after World War II, but also why the benefits of that growth were not shared equally. So the next time you ask yourself, why don't black people pick themselves up by their bootstraps and make a better life for themselves? Look at your grandfather and your great-grandfather and ask them how welfare and the handout from the government helped you go to college because they now have a house in Long Island, they have a house in Colorado, they have a house in New Jersey. Look at America, you have to ask yourself why racism is built into everything. And then you blame the people you oppressed and disenfranchised for the oppression and disenfranchisement that you caused.
Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Ben.
I'm Kali.
So let me ask you something. If a country asks you to fight for it, risk your life for it, leave your family for it, shouldn't that same country make sure you are treated fairly when you come back home? Because right now a serious conversation is happening online. So many Black Americans are speaking out and saying something very clear. We don't want another war. And their reason is deeper than politics. And they say history has told them something very painful.
Yeah, across the social medias, the podcast, and the community discussions, many voices in the Black community are questioning the idea of the United States getting involved in another war. I mean, the argument they're making is making sense because they say the Black Americans have always shown up to fight for this country. And this is true. Many have served on the front lines. Many came home with trauma, injuries, and sacrifices that have changed their lives forever. But when they returned home, the reality waiting for them is often very different. Think about the Vietnam War. Thousands of Black soldiers were sent to fight. In fact, during the early years of Vietnam, Black troops were deployed to combat wars at a very high rate. They fought, they died, they sacrificed. But back home, America was still dealing with segregation, racism, and even civil rights struggles.
Sure.
Imagine risking your life overseas while your own community is fighting just to get the equal rights at home. That contradiction created a deep scar in American history, and many people in the Black community still remember that. Let's watch some videos, then we'll come back. And if you're new here, please, you may consider subscribing.
Some Black Americans, foreign policy feels distant from daily survival. The wars change names, the headlines change countries, but the pattern feels familiar. From Vietnam to Iraq, Black Americans have consistently served on the front lines of wars framed as fights for democracy abroad, while still battling inequity at home. During the Vietnam War, civil rights leaders openly questioned why young Black men were being drafted to defend freedoms overseas that they themselves did not fully experience in America. Decades later, the Iraq War followed a similar pattern. Black service members disproportionately represented in combat roles, yet returning to communities struggling with underfunded schools, limited healthcare access, and economic instability. Many people are coming to social media expressing their feelings of wanting to be viewed separately in response to the war. In relation to how Black and brown people are treated unfairly in the States, but are asked to fight for the country, news correspondent Joy Ann Reid would end up sharing a moment over a young Latino soldier telling his family bye before shipping off to fight. As far as some Black Americans, they would make sure that it was known that Black Americans did not see itself a part of this new conflict.
Hey, Iran. First and foremost, Assalamu alaikum. Happy Ramadan. Yes, you want to get my formalities out the way. That ain't got nothing to do with us. You know, I'm just here to speak on behalf of my people. We ain't never had an issue with y'all. My name is actually Arabic. If you knew anything about niggas, we really do admire the Muslim community. Have y'all ever heard of Malcolm X? Y'all would have loved him. Y'all have our permission.
Quick question, how do we make the Iran people know that it's just him? You don't have nothing to do with that, mama. Everybody in Iran, please tell your leaders, girl, we had nothing, girl, it was him. It was just Donald.
Over on X, one user would even say, "Dear Iran, we don't have smoke with you. We cool?" Signed, the Blacks of America. Black people's treatment is not lost on Iran. The country once tried to throw support behind Black Americans, condemning police brutality after George Floyd's murder and saying U.S. treatment of Black people was so concerning it deserved sanctions of its own. Tehran's officials publicly criticized how Black people were treated by U.S. police and vowed to target what they call systematic racism in America with punitive measures, using Floyd's death as the justification. So you've got Iran pointing at American racial injustice and Black Americans reacting to war with, "That ain't got nothing to do with us." It's almost like, see, Iran, we don't want any smoke, and we have something in common. But that doesn't mean either side actually sees eye to eye. It just shows how far U.S. domestic issues echo abroad and shape global narratives. You see, when the U.S. bombs Iran, the expectation is unity. But for many Black Americans, the response is different. We don't want any smoke. We didn't vote for this. and to some, this feels like another unnecessary war. History plays a role in that reaction. Black Americans have fought in every major U.S. conflict, from Vietnam to Iraq, often in disproportionate numbers. Yet the battles at home, voting rights, police reform, still feeling very much so unresolved. So when wars move faster than justice, skepticism follows. And here's the irony. After George Floyd's murder in 2020, Iranian officials publicly criticized the U.S. over its treatment of black Americans, amplifying "I can't breathe" on the global stage. Whether that was solidarity or strategy, it's debatable, but it happened. So when some of us say that ain't got nothing to do with us, it may sound dismissive, but for many it's fatigue, it's distance, it's a community wary of being pulled into another conflict while still fighting battles at home. And that tension, that's the real story.
Fast forward in recent wars, again, the Black Americans served in large numbers in the US military. They followed the orders, they defended the country, but after those wars ended, many veterans returned to the community that was still struggling with underfunded schools, limited healthcare access, and economic instability. So now the question being asked is simple. Why are we always ready for war abroad, but very slow in fixing problems at home?
I mean, of course, the US supports many countries, mostly, let's say, African countries. We have no problem with that. But please, you may consider still supporting your people in your country.
Sure.
Okay? Yeah, the charity begins at home. Moving on. So that's where the phrase you're hearing online comes from, not our war. For many people saying this, it's not about supporting another country, it's about asking a tough question. Why should communities that are still feeling underserved be the first one expected to sacrifice again? Some people argue that before sending troops anywhere in this world, the country should focus on fixing the education, improving the healthcare, creating economic opportunities, and supporting the veterans who already served.
Because from their perspective, patriotism should be a two-way street.
Sure.
If citizens are willing to defend their country, the countries will also defend their quality of life. Now, to be fair, not everyone agrees with the viewpoint. Some people say national security affects everyone.
True.
That's true. They argue that if the United States faces a serious global threat, the country has to respond. Others say military service is a choice and not part of protecting the nation as a whole.
But one thing is clear, the voices speaking up right now aren't just talking about Iran, they're talking about trust. Trust that sacrifice will be respected, trust that service will lead to opportunities, trust that the country people defend will also defend them. And until that, many people feel that trust is fully real. You're going to keep hearing this question come up again and again. Why fight for a country abroad when so much still needs to be fixed at home?
So let's hear from you. Do you think communities that have historically carried a heavy burden in the wars have the right to question new conflicts?
Or do you believe that national defense should come first, no matter what?
Drop your thoughts in the comment section.
And you may consider subscribing if you are new. Bye.
Let's hear from you. Do you think communities that have historically carried a heavy burden in wars have the right to question new conflicts?
Or do you believe that the national defense should come first, no matter what?
Drop your thoughts in the comments.
And if you're new here, you may consider subscribing to our
Bye.
channel. Bye.